Що тут на Харківському
Here near Kharkiv, I survived 5 Lancet hits, 9 artillery impacts, 14 FPVs. Yeah, I'm a lucky guy.
This soldier just came straight from a position near Kharkiv. Was it pure luck, or is German engineering truly capable of withstanding the hell of modern warfare? Overnight, Russia thought its rear areas were safe, and then the battlefield changed forever. This is the RCH-155, a wheeled beast that can fire on the move, hit targets tens of kilometers away, and disappear before the enemy even knows where the shots came from. Imagine this. One moment Russian troops are sipping tea far behind the front line. The next, they're diving for cover under a storm of shells from a gun that was never supposed to reach them. But here's the catch. Ukraine still doesn't have it at the front. So why is Germany holding back its most advanced artillery while sending Leopards, Gepards, PZH-2000s, and even the Iris-T? And which of these weapons is really turning the tide? Stay with us, because today we'll uncover the German arsenal in Ukraine and reveal which system truly deserves the crown. Feast your eyes on the reigning queen of the battlefield, PZH-2000. Every outgoing round is like a strike on a funeral drum. The loading system rattles like the last door slamming shut. And every incoming hit feels like the wrath of God itself. Can you hear the word Panzer Howitzer in those thunderclaps? Smash the like button if you hear it too. And what about protection from this war's curse? Drones? It all depends on the angle of impact and whether extra passive armor plates were bolted on at the strike zone. What's it made of? Fiberglass blocks on a steel base. Sometimes survival is as simple as parking under thick trees. And if your dugout is reinforced with chain link mesh, even better. The PZH-2000 isn't just tough, it's fast. Roll out, fire, and scoot back into cover before the enemy even blinks. In just 9 seconds, it can fire 3 shells, and in under a minute, 10 shells. Its accuracy? Already battlefield legend. But pure firepower isn't the only job for this German beast.
контрнаступів.
Our tasks? Counter battery fire, mining the area, stopping counterattacks or assaults, supporting infantry, suppressing everything. Too many tasks to count.
The PZH-2000's fire control system includes a combined day-night sight and a laser rangefinder, allowing ultra-fast targeting. The commander's seat has a digital display hooked into the onboard computer. It's basically a point-and-click death machine. Boom.
Попросили відпрацювати.
Literally yesterday we were asked to set the forest on fire with special rounds. Well, roughly speaking, we lit it up and burned it down.
The PZH-2000 has a whole buffet of ammunition types. Officially, Germany didn't supply incendiary rounds to Ukraine. What we do know is that the PZH-2000 can use illumination shells. They carry very little explosive, but a lot of material that can ignite wood. And in dry weather, even a regular HE round can turn a tree line into a bonfire, cutting off Russian maneuver routes.
Ми його запалили і спалили.
That forest had a Russian company strongpoint inside. We flushed out 2 platoons from there, and even burned some of them.
Война началась, ты шо, бля?
Not bad. But if you don't want just a bonfire, and instead you want a full-blown hellscape that eats everything in its path, you call another German.
Перед нами не класична.
This isn't the traditional American one, but the German version, the MAS 2 MLRS.
This tracked launcher, built on the chassis of an American M2 Bradley 1FV, is basically a licensed copy of the US M270 MLRS, with a few tweaks. For one, the Mars 2 is about 1.8 tons heavier than the M270. Guess why? Right, the German system got a beefed-up aluminum crew cabin with overpressure ventilation, giving the commander, driver, and gunner a rare gift on the front: comfort and protection. Honestly, that's a very German kind of improvement. It also comes with an automatic nitrogen-based fire suppression system, and instead of hydraulic drives, Mars 2 uses an electric launch drive system. Faster, cleaner, easier to maintain. Finally, the European Fire Control System, EFCS, allows precise control of each rocket and supports nearly every modern munition. Nearly. Because Germany signed the Cluster Munitions Convention, unlike the US, Mars 2 can't fire M26, M26A1, or M30 cluster rounds. What can Ukrainians say about such challenges?
The main mission of Mars 2 is to destroy enemy troops and equipment concentrations, supply depots, refueling points, and command posts with surgical precision.
We'll add remote mining with special rockets, suppression of air defenses, comms nodes, and artillery batteries. Missions where accuracy isn't just nice to have, it changes the entire front sector. And here, Germany gave Ukraine another ace card, Cobra. No, not the snake. Though the metaphor works, it's the counter-battery radar, a German system that figures out exactly where Russian guns, mortars, or even MLRS just fired from in a matter of seconds. How does it work? At first glance, simple. A radar beam scans the sky, searching for rounds, rockets, or shells. The moment it catches one, the supercomputer instantly plots its trajectory and backtracks to the launch point. That data goes straight to Ukrainian artillery, and a few minutes later, that launch site is reduced to scrap. But in practice, it's not that simple. A radar beam also gives away the radar's own location. That's why you'll never see Ukrainian Cobra operators in interviews or online. Russian intel has been hunting this Wunderwaffe for 3.5 years, and still hasn't bagged one. The kicker: Cobra can detect and classify over 40 artillery batteries in under 2 minutes, with a detection range up to 100 kilometers. Insane efficiency. The only drawback: numbers. Ukraine asked for 40 units, but Germany managed to deliver only 3 to 5. Still, the Germans sweetened the deal with something else. At first glance, it's just a small suitcase-sized fixed-wing drone. But, as you might guess, nothing is ever that simple.
Vector називається. Це
This is the Vector, an electric recon UAV built on a VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing scheme. It's got 3 engines with tilt rotors like the Osprey.
The Vector UAV from Quantum Systems doesn't need a catapult. It literally launches from the hand. Just grab it, lift it, and whoosh.
при підйомі до 30 метрів.
At 30 meters altitude, the servos tilt the propellers horizontal, and it flies like a plane. You can launch it from grass up to your chest. Same thing on landing. You can just catch it by hand.
But the real killer feature of Vector isn't VTOL. It's the insane camera.
Next Vision Raptor в своєму як маса.
The Next Vision Raptor camera is considered the best in its class. It's got a 40 times optical zoom, so you can spot a decent-sized target from up to 9 kilometers away in good weather. Plus, an excellent thermal imager, even usable in daytime.
And that's still not the end of it. Vector turned out to be so good that Ukraine started producing a licensed version, with upgrades. The Ukrainian build adds acoustic sensors. Basically, a microphone that picks up enemy artillery fire up to 15 kilometers away.
Відзумся трошки.
Диви. Що там? О!
Спостерігаю вторинну детонацію.
Okay, but what about tanks? Because tanks are supposed to be the trademark of German engineering, right? Exactly. Here's a Leopard 2 ripping apart a Russian convoy, showcasing one of its best tricks, the fire control system.
Якщо ціль двигається,
I lock onto the target. If it's moving, I press these buttons for 3 to 6 seconds. The computer tracks it automatically. I can maneuver, even turn around completely, but the gun stays locked on target.
Ukraine received under 100 Leopard 2s in various modifications from its allies. Not a huge number for a war where tank losses are counted in the thousands. But next to Soviet-era junk, a Leopard 2 looks like a brand new iPhone sitting next to a rotary phone from the 1970s. When you see a Leopard 2 in action, you don't get that slow-motion footage vibe you often get with older tanks. This is free advertising for German armor at its finest. And how does it compare to the Abrams? Stay tuned. One of our next videos is dedicated entirely to that clash. For now, let's make a bold claim. The Leopard 2 is not the most effective German weapon in Ukrainian hands. So what is? It's the IRIS-T, Germany's masterpiece of air defense, designed to swat targets even if they're hiding behind flares, smoke, or decoys. Probably the most advanced weapon of this entire war.
Установки зенітно-ракетного комплексу.
We've got 2 modifications of IRIS-T, the SLM and the SLS. SLM is the big launcher, meant specifically for cruise missiles. SLS is the smaller one, using cheaper missiles against drones.
Every day, Russia launches waves of missiles and drones. And every day, IRIS-T operators say, no thanks, and send them to the trash bin. The secret: super maneuverable IRIS-T missiles adapted from air-to-air versions for ground launch. The SLM, surface-launched medium variant, was heavily reworked and enlarged, reaching 40 kilometers in range and up to 20 kilometers altitude. Meanwhile, the SLS short-range launch uses the original air-to-air missile. We've got entire videos dedicated to IRIS-T in Ukraine, so check those for full details. But here's a little secret. The true drone-killing champion isn't the IRIS-T at all. It's something much older. Yes, it's the Gepard SPOG. This self-propelled anti-aircraft cannon left the Bundeswehr back in 2011, looking like an aging rock star. But sometimes fate hands you a second youth. There are two radars here. The first one, folded behind the turret when on the move, is for target acquisition. The second radar is for tracking and fire control.
Захвачую цели.
Locking the target, tracking, and taking it down.
But the main trick of the Gepard isn't even the radar. It's the twin 35mm cannons. They're like two raised fingers of victory. These Swiss-made Oerlikon KDA guns can hit targets up to 13,000 feet, making them perfect for intercepting Shahed-type kamikaze drones that haunt Ukrainian skies every night. That's why the Gepard is the reigning champion of drone kills. But who's going to take the belt tomorrow? Our bet is on Skynex. Yes, also German. And yes, also using an Oerlikon gun, but the new generation, which means faster fire rate, up to 1,000 rounds per minute, and it sounds beautiful. A Skynex battery is made up of 4 revolver gun Mk3 units. Each is unmanned because the operators sit separately at a control post. That means each piece of the battery can be hidden and dispersed, making it harder to destroy in one strike. The primary radar station is also separate. It scans, detects, and classifies targets. But each gun has its own tracking radar, so it can autonomously lock and shoot even if comms are jammed. Yes, Skynex is already fighting in Ukraine, but their numbers are still very limited. That's why, for now, it's not the main player. But trust us, it's got a bright career ahead. So, do you agree? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Did we just show you the best German weapons in Ukrainian service, or is the real champion someone else? Maybe we missed your pick? If so, write it down. Thanks for watching, and stay sharp.
This isn't the American M270 MLRS, but its German version, the so-called Mars 2.
Visually, distinguishing the Mars 2, which translates from German as Medium Artillery Rocket System from the basic American M270, is indeed pretty damn hard. However, there are more differences between the copy and the original than meets the eye. Where does the Mars 2 outperform the original? Where does it fall short? And how does that impact its effectiveness? Why do they hand out Hero of Russia stars for destroying an M270? And which of them can survive a nuclear strike? That's exactly what you're about to find out. So, Ukraine received only 5 Mars 2 units. Oops! Now, there are only 4 left. This is just about the only video where a Mars 2 gets hit. Yet the Russian side claims 45 destroyed German systems. That's more than the Bundeswehr even has in stock. No comment, as they say. Sorry. Here are 2 more Mars 2s. They're being hauled to Germany for repairs. Did they return to the battlefield? Unknown. But
We are working and continue destroying the enemy.
in any case, the Mars 2 is the rarest and most mysterious MLRS on the front. The only thing rarer might be this hybrid, consisting of a BMW 7 Series and an MLRS. Before we start the main story, subscribe to our channel and you'll see even crazier wonders than this. So, the BMW-based MLRS is impressive, but it surely can't compare to the Mars 2 in range.
According to the tactical technical specs, the Mars 2's maximum range is 84 kilometers.
Right now, that range doesn't offer total safety for the crew, because modernized versions of Russian Lancets demonstrate the ability to hit targets at a distance of no less than 70 kilometers. And this is exactly what forces Ukrainian crews to literally dissolve the Mars 2s into the terrain immediately after a salvo. If it weren't for the tactics the Ukrainians use, we would have forgotten about their existence entirely. Here's how a mission usually goes down. A Mars 2 never heads to a firing position alone. Up front, a pickup. In the back, a pickup. At the right moment, the convoy halts. The pickup up front blocks the road. The pickup in the rear does the same. Nobody goes anywhere. Everyone waits while the Mars 2 does its work. Usually, it's a couple or 3 launches. In about 150 seconds, the rockets reach the target. Thanks to their high speed and steep flight trajectory, Mars 2 rockets are an extremely difficult target for enemy air defense systems, since the time from launch to impact is minimal. But is 3 rockets enough to destroy a target?
Точність даної системи.
Regarding accuracy, it's plus or minus 7 meters.
The Mars 2 is equipped with the European Fire Control System, developed by Airbus and Krauss-Maffei Wegmann. It entered service in 2011, meaning this is a very modern system that allows for precise control of every single rocket. And instead of hydraulic drives, it's got an electric launch drive system installed, faster, and requiring less maintenance. However, the Mars 2 uses only 2 types of ammo. Imagine a weapon that costs nearly $1 million, built for just 2 rockets. Maybe there's some super cool secret stuff? The M30 and M31 rockets belong to the MLRS family, Guided Multiple Launch Rocket System. Yeah, these are high-precision guided rockets with a 227mm caliber. But is that kind of loadout enough for modern warfare? Let's start with the M31. The rocket pack's only a 90-kilogram warhead, yet it possesses colossal destructive power. Its effect comes down to 3 factors. First off, the rocket has a tough steel body and strikes the target at a near 90-degree angle at hypersonic speed. So it literally punches through earthen berms and reinforced concrete ceilings. That means an underground bunker or warehouse isn't a safe haven, because the explosion, which happens right inside the facility, destroys the supports, leading to the collapse of the entire structure. Second, that 90-kilogram warhead generates a massive shockwave. Even if the explosion happens on the surface, everything within a radius of up to 50 meters gets destroyed, even armored vehicles. Third, shrapnel. Although the M31 isn't a specialized fragmentation rocket, upon detonation its steel casing shatters into thousands of heavy, jagged fragments that tear through everything in their path up to 100 to 150 meters from the epicenter.
Ударами по скупченню живої сили.
We hit enemy manpower, vehicles, ammo dumps, command posts. These are surgically precise strikes with maximum effectiveness.
Of course, against manpower, a cluster warhead works better, but the Germans banned themselves from using such munitions and even signed the corresponding convention. It's a bit strange because the other rocket the Mars 2 uses instead of the Cluster 1 is hard to call any more humane. It's the diabolical M30, packing 180,000 tungsten balls. If a high explosive warhead is a hammer blow and cluster munitions are a scatter of rocks, then the M30 is a steel rain that shreds infantry, artillery crews, trucks, radar stations, and light armored vehicles. The M30 detonates in the air, above a designated point, and in that instant, instead of a single concentrated explosion, a dense downpour of steel is unleashed. So where's the humanity in that? It's simple. Unlike cluster munitions, the M30 doesn't have bomblets that might fail to detonate and lie in wait for years. In other words, humanity here is primarily about responsibility for what happens after the war. Hit the like button if you also think this approach is the right one. However, the American M270 looks like a more flexible system because it can operate both as a high-precision weapon and as a traditional MLRS that churns up several hectares of terrain in a single salvo.
Yeah, we've been working much more intensely, especially lately, because the enemy is pushing from all directions.
The M270's role is so high that they grant the title of hero in Russia for destroying a single M270. It all comes down to the ammo variety. It is essentially a platform defined by what it's loaded with. That's exactly why the Ukrainians are blurring out the rockets in this footage. But you can identify them by the aftermath. The first munitions for the M270 were the M26s, cluster rockets containing hundreds of submunitions for the mass destruction of infantry and vehicles. One M270, with no exaggeration, is capable of blanketing an area, halting an offensive, and denying any further advance. Here's what's left after a strike like that near Pokrovsk. If you want to be even more precise, the M270 slings the exact same M30 and M31 rockets that the Mars 2 fires, meaning the M270 can replace the Mars 2, but the Mars 2 can never replace the M270. because if you need to drop a rocket right down the Russian's collar, the M270 gets loaded with ATACMS ballistic missiles with a range of up to 300 kilometers. This gives you the ability to hit some very juicy targets. True, you can only load one missile instead of a pod with 6 MLRSs. But 2 missiles are enough to completely wipe out a Russian recon drone operator's command post, just like in this footage.
When the others can't get the job done, our rocket flies.
Besides that, the American M2070 can fire precision strike missiles, which have a range of 500 kilometers. But the modernized M270A2 versions, which underwent the upgrade for the new missiles, aren't being supplied to Ukraine just yet. This modification only recently started entering mass service with the US Army and deploying in Europe. However, precision strike missiles are fully compatible with the M142 HIMARS that are fighting in Ukraine. But these modern missiles also aren't being delivered to the front yet, so we can't say anything about their real combat performance. But we do have a video on our channel about the daily combat grind of the HIMARS, so we won't dwell on these systems in detail, but we'll continue with the differences between the Mars 2 and the M270. So, the Mars 2 and M270 sit on the tracked chassis from the Bradley 1FV, which stubbornly drags the machine to places where wheels have no business being. Churned up fields, wet soil, tank ruts, tree lines. But this isn't just a turretless Bradley, it's a distinct vehicle, because a special elongated M993 platform was developed for the MLRS, consisting of proven components: engine, transmission, suspension, tracks, and the general logic of the armor. Here's the result. First off, the missile chassis is significantly longer and has 8 road wheels on each side instead of 6 like on the Bradley. This is necessary to evenly distribute the weight of the massive launcher and ensure stability during a salvo. Second, the engine and transmission are located under the crew cab, and the cab itself is much wider than on a Bradley, seating 3 people in a row: commander, gunner, and driver. But why is the German Mars 2 1.8 tons heavier than the American M270? If you want to test your intuition, hit pause and write your guess in the comments. And now for the official info. The weight increase of the German MLRS happened partly due to the electric drives installed instead of hydraulics. But what weighs even more is the better protected aluminum cab module, which features ventilation and an overpressure system. Thanks to this, dirty air, dust, toxic gases, and even radioactive particles after a nuclear strike can't get inside the cab through the cracks. That's not all. The Mars 2's armored glass, capable of withstanding bullets and high-speed shrapnel, adds another few dozen kilograms. And the Mars 2's mine protection adds another few hundred kilograms. A reinforced hull bottom protects the crew from blasts by anti-personnel mines and light IEDs. The M270 doesn't have this. But neither the Mars 2 nor the M270 can survive a blast from a TM62 anti-tank mine. Nor can they withstand a hit from an RPG or a Lancet, and their rocket pods are equally protected only by a light aluminum box. A large chunk of shrapnel, or a 12.7mm, can damage the rocket inside the pod, making a launch impossible or dangerous. That's exactly why crews meticulously camouflage their vehicles. The exact number of M270 MLRSs provided to Ukraine is unknown, because the total count includes 6 units of the French LRU modification, Lance Roquettes Unitaires. Distinguishing them from the M270 is even harder. Maybe a video on that will appear on this channel in the future.
We're doing a massive job helping our infantry. I think there's a reason they say artillery is the god of war.
You're also doing a big job when you write your thanks, impressions, or requests for future videos in the comments. We read everything.
One look at these Marder cannon rounds, and the enemy might have decided the battle wasn't worth showing up for. With the anti-drone protection mounted, the German IFV looks weird. But this is pure German power, and right now you're watching the beginning of its mission. Will this protection save the Marder? Will the crew have enough ammo? Here they absolutely believe humans have a sixth sense, an instinct that warns you about what's coming, but you don't have to guess anything, because you're about to see it all with your own eyes.
Все, я готов. Все, погнали.
The sky is overcast, the sun is nowhere to be seen, but it's exactly this kind of weather that gives the Marder crew their best chance. That's why the Ukrainians decide to make this push. A Humvee is also part of the mission. Past that arch begins the gray zone, where the straight road isn't always the shortest one. They're being guided like a shepherd guiding a herd. Only the shepherd is their own UAV. The Humvee follows behind for now.
Костян, я Ярий, на зв'язок, прийом.
But it seems the connection is lost. The crew isn't responding. Most likely Russian EW is jamming them, but there's hope the EW is blocking only one direction of the signal. A normal situation in war, so the mission continues.
Костян, я Ярий, якщо мене чуєш, зараз буде, получається, 50 метрів і поворот наліво.
Oops, but the Marder turns right. Is the connection fully gone? Fortunately, no. Even though the thin, crunchy snow hasn't yet turned into dirty slush, the ice is unforgiving, and it becomes the first real test for the German IFV.
Костян, давай задки, и впереди тебя сейчас будет техаммер, и за ним прием.
The Marder's tracks handle light off-road terrain pretty well, but they're helpless against ice. Damn, which genius came up with these rubber inserts? But look, the Marder is already closing in on enemy positions, so to stay focused on the mission, we'll return to its tracks later. But there is time for you to subscribe to this channel. Hit it, because your subscription hits the YouTube algorithm like a shot of adrenaline.
Едь прямо!
Because of the tension, the gunner started a bit early. It happens, and far worse things happen too. But while the Humvee covers the withdrawal, the Marder pushes several dozen meters farther forward. There it is, the edge of the tree line where they need to open up. The automatic 20mm Mk20 cannon literally cuts a chunk out of the forest, 880 rounds per minute. That's not your gentle boom boom. Inside, everything vibrates like the Marder is about to lift off the ground.
У нас еще есть трохи времени, хотя бы 5 минут или 3, чтобы его вывести, и будет все хорошо.
The cannon's ammo load is only 1,250 rounds, so the gunner's work ends quickly. But this isn't even half the mission, because everything around them is mined.
Костик, иди по своим следам.
The 20mm Rheinmetall cannon isn't the Marder's only weapon. It also has a coaxial 7.62mm MG3 with a giant ammo reserve, 5,000 rounds. But the commander ordered the MG3 to be used only on the way back, if absolutely needed. You never want to return completely empty, because from behind any tree or any ruined wall, a desperate RPG gunner can jump out.
Сука, прикинь. Баба-Яга. Хлопці, ви видите, Баба-Яга над ним висит?
Bad news. Baba Yaga is a type of UAV that can have 6 motors and lift up to 15 kilograms of explosives. Baba Yaga always appears out of nowhere and keeps striking until it kills. But the Marder crew gets lucky. This Baba Yaga is already empty, see? So the crew keeps moving. But after a few more kilometers, the Marder still takes a hit.
Його в'їбали.
But no. The vehicle is intact, though it looks like the transmission or the engine took damage, because the Marder is standing in the middle of an intersection like a Christmas tree in the town square. That is very dangerous. But finally the engine fires up. The Marder keeps moving. Most likely, the operator of the Russian Baba Yaga UAV passed the Marder's coordinates to his colleagues, and they managed to catch up with the IFV just before it exited the gray zone. But the Marder survived the strike, and with a damaged triplex, it returns to base late in the evening.
Это хорошо. Генералы теперь будут разматы.
Да. Паша скажет, все равно хуй пароль.
Maybe there were some mistakes, but we're not generals. And if you are a general, drop a comment and tell us what you think about this mission. And if you're not a general yet, just hit like and keep watching, because this isn't even the hottest Marder mission of the day. In these rare frames, a Marder goes into the assault together with a Bradley and a Striker. Who's the odd one out here? Probably the Striker. It's a wheeled APC, so its protection is much lighter. On top of that, the 12.7mm M2 Browning machine gun used on the Ukrainian Striker is no match for the Marder's 20mm cannon or the Bradley's 25mm Bushmaster cannon, so the Striker is the first to drop out of the fight. After a drone strike, it turns away. One tumbled overboard, and then there were two. Bradley and Marder split up to make the job harder for the Russian operators and keep pushing the assault. Just a few minutes later, a drone hits the Marder. Russian operators clearly picked it as the second target. The German armor holds the hit, and the vehicle heads for the forest for cover under the trees. But even there, another drone arrives. At this moment, the Bradley keeps executing the mission, firing non-stop and closing in on Russian positions. But a drone catches up with it too, and then a second one. But the Bradley crew manages to get into the woods under tree cover. What happens next? Another Marder enters the fight. Ukrainian commanders decided to complete the mission and support their comrades. And we consider this final assault the most spontaneous attack of this entire war. Look, it rushes into battle even without a grill, relying only on its EW. Inside are fighters reinforcing the German armor with their own prayers. And it clearly works. The first drone flies past. Then two anti-tank missiles also miss. The Marder pours lead generously on enemy positions. Two more missiles miss, and another drone overshoots, dropping like a sick bird just a few meters away. And there they are, the enemy trenches. That's it, job done. Now it's the assault troops' turn to clear the trenches. A few meters of territory are retaken, several Russian soldiers are killed, and several surrender. Well, luck favors the bold. But victory comes to those who bring along a very specific teammate, a tank. These are the frames of the brightest Marder mission in Ukraine. This may be the peak of the old German IFV's career. So first on stage is the tank. Its cannon roars so hard that the walls of the building where the Russians are hiding shake and crumble into dust. A few more shots, and even the Ukrainian drone operators watching this scene are shocked. Now the little one charges into battle, the Marder with infantry inside. First, it smashes the corner of the building so it doesn't take a shot in the back. Then it breaks through the first fence, then the second fence, and bursts onto the target's territory. Within seconds, the Ukrainian IFV is right next to the main building and drops off the troops. The job is done. Now the infantry has the slow, precise work of clearing the area. Despite its age, the Marder doesn't look like some worn-out relic that has already lived its life. Ukraine received around 200 Marder IFVs, used mostly by the Marine Corps and the air assault units. Most of them are the 1A3 modification introduced in the late 1980s. Many have been lost in brutal battles. But the Marder still fights, still shoots, still breaks through. and still saves infantry, proving that old age is not a verdict. On the contrary, its forged solid German armor still takes hits from FPV drones and shrapnel strikes with dignity, giving the crew a chance to survive in situations where lighter vehicles turn into scrap metal. And the main thing, the combination of the 20mm cannon and the MG3 machine gun remains one of the most balanced tandems on the battlefield. You've just seen it yourself. The only combo that works better than this German pair is the American duo, the Bushmaster cannon plus the coaxial 7.62mm machine gun on the Bradley. Check out the videos on our channel with Bradley duels and assaults, where its cannon turns Russian armor into a colander.
This story begins with an assault near Pokrovsk.
One of the main rules for a tanker is hit fast and get out fast.
Russian tankers, not trusting their DIY grill cages, were praying to the angels to help them break through to a key height. But little did they know that a Ukrainian Leopard 2 was already waiting for them on that hilltop, fully loaded with tungsten core darts that can punch through just about anything. But first, the Russian convoy had to squeeze through this bottleneck in a half-destroyed village, and by the laws of the genre, Ukrainian drones were waiting for them. The first tank hit blocks the road for the others. The bottleneck works. The Russians are forced to turn back. At first glance, nothing unusual. Drones have long been the kings of the battlefield. You've probably gotten used to footage like this, but not everything is what it seems. Look closely at the first tank that stopped, the one with the mine plow. It didn't burn after the first hit. It kept standing against wave after wave. Ukrainian FPVs bounce off it like arrows off Achilles' shield. And those that do explode, they're clearly not getting through the armor. According to Russians, this tank took no fewer than 60 hits. Even if that's an exaggeration, the footage alone is insane. And here's the twist. After the battle, the tank remained in the gray zone for a while. Ukrainians never managed to torch it. Later, the Russians pulled it back, and it turned out the tank hadn't stopped because of the drones at all, but because its transmission broke. Look at this machine. Let's call it Achilles' shield. It walked through hell and came back nearly untouched. The improvised armor actually worked. Watch till the end to see how Ukrainians make this beast fall. That Russian command decided to slap the same protection onto more tanks and repeat the mad assault. But before we show you that fight, let's take a closer look at what makes Achilles' shield so special. Hit the like button, because your like is our weapon against YouTube's brutal algorithms. Thanks. First thing that jumps out are the chain dreadlocks. Steel ropes dangling like the fringe of a gypsy wagon. Here's how they work against drones. The FPV's shaped charge warhead detonates far from the actual armor, leaving the tank unharmed. Second, the heavy cage armor wrapped all around. Behind it, you see the core structure, a metal box. And what's stuffed inside that box? Yep, wooden logs. On top, an extra welded steel grill cage. Add to that a beefy 11-channel EW system, thermal imagers, and dual cameras, front and rear. But the craziest part is hidden inside Achilles' shield. You can only get in with a special ladder. Inside, there's even a compartment for infantry, lined with thick metal. And here's the wildest thing. The commander's station is in there too. For safety, the commander sits outside the main tank hull, like some IT guy in a coffee shop, directing the crew via cameras and intercom. Unreal. Well, looks like all the tanks are ready for the assault. Crews are loading ammunition. Now it's just a matter of attaching the mine plow to the lead tank, because every meter of the gray zone has been mined several times by both sides. And now, let's go to the battlefield. Alongside the 4 tanks carrying Achilles' shield rolled in more vehicles with the usual grill cages strapped on top. And behind them, more armored friends. The whole convoy looks like it's headed to a picnic. You can already start feeling sorry for the Russian infantry clinging to their armor. Such parade-style convoys are rare these days, but just the sight of Achilles' shield gave everyone the feeling. This time, we'll break through for sure. Spoiler, no, they will not. Out in the open gray zone, the convoy's speed slowed, because the lead tank with the mine plow couldn't move faster than 10 kilometers per hour. No, you're not looking at the pyramids of Egypt on the horizon. That's Donbass, baby. Its history is a bit like America's Wild West. Here, the Knights of the Wild Steppe, Ukrainian Cossacks, always ruled. Because of the convoy's snail pace and the long distance to Ukrainian lines, the defenders had time to prepare their welcome. A Leopard 2 rolled into position. Let's call him Harvester of Sorrow. Look, the camo makes it almost invisible. And of course, the Russians had no clue they were already walking into the harvest. The Harvester of Sorrow starts carving up the convoy with German precision. The Russians had no idea what was hitting them. Does Achilles' shield save them this time? As you can see, all those improvised add-ons are useless against DM-23A PFSDS rounds. Every shot from Leopard's 120mm cannon lands like a scythe strike. If it doesn't outright kill a tank, it tears all the extra junk clean off. Without Achilles' shield, those tanks are naked in the steppe. And naked, they can be killed by a simple FPV drone. Uncovering these frontline stories takes a massive effort. Support our mission by subscribing to the channel. The Russian formation falls apart. Some try to turn back home, but no, those who veer off the path hit mines. Others fire back, anywhere, just to fire. But it feels like nobody's walking away from today's meat grinder. The accuracy of German tanks is legendary. And honestly, Leopard itself has already become a legend of this war. You'll find several videos on our channel showing how it fights. There's even a video comparing the combat capabilities of the German tank with the American Abrams under real war conditions. So, let's not get sidetracked now. At some point though, hope flickers for the Russians. The Leopard falls silent. Maybe its ammo racks are empty? After all, a standard Leopard 2A4 carries up to 42 rounds. Nobody knows for sure. But Ukrainians had a reliable backup. Artillery was already locked on Russian coordinates. And FPV drones are circling above. So the harvest goes on. It doesn't stop even when the shooting dies down. They say the scariest sound in this war isn't explosions or artillery fire. It's silence. Because silence here is always deceptive. In that silence, you start to hear a thin, nervous buzzing, like a mosquito near your ear. Yeah, that's drones. Writing the new soundtrack of modern war. Their sound cuts your nerves like a razor. Doesn't matter if it's flying at you or not, because that buzz means game over. Attempts to shoot one down with small arms rarely work.
Демель, добряку, я 300. Что-то в башку осколок попал, я пока в пулесополке. Тебя пришел.
Нас разбили.
Я выхожу один, Дюс остался там. Все пацаны, это я один, кто вышел. Это посадка. Нас просто... Дюса не могу вытащить.
Even the infantrymen who survived the first strikes and tried to hide in a sparse forest are now doomed to be buried without names. Do they stand a chance of surviving if they make it to nightfall? Maybe, but they can't go back because their commander's order is clear. Push toward Pokrovsk, hole up inside the buildings of the suburban village of Shevchenko, and wait for the next wave of assault troops.
Раненый. Шериф, хочу выбраться, но темно уже. Никто не дает.
That's Russian tactics in action. Stockpiling forces behind Ukrainian lines. Some sit there for weeks, with no water, no food, and then either surrender or die.
Никогда не идите на СВО. Вы попадете в жопу.
And yet some do survive, and set ambushes for Ukrainian soldiers. So by morning, the harvest for the Leopard 2 begins again.
We mostly fire on buildings where drone operators are hiding, infantry, or where weapons and ammo might be stored.
But in dense urban terrain, you can't use artillery or a tank from a closed position. The buildings block the shot. So another Leopard 2 A4 crew pushes into the city to fire the old-fashioned way. Direct fire. In the city, a tank faces just as many enemies. This Leopard 2 A4 is draped with a mesh canopy and ringed with Contact 1 reactive armor. The heavy Leopard stands out against the streets where just yesterday there were shops and apartment blocks. Tense minutes, because from any corner could pop a man with an anti-tank guided missile. And at any moment, a Russian drone with a shaped charge warhead might appear in the sky. And there it is, the panel block building where Russian infantry are holed up. These Soviet-era concrete buildings usually have walls up to 400 millimeters thick, reinforced with steel rods. For most jobs against dug-in infantry and buildings, the go-to round is the DM-11 programmable high explosive shell.
У нас походу гости.
The tank gun becomes a storming squad of its own. Roll up, fire, and the whole floor bursts apart like cardboard. Need to repeat? No problem. The goal is simple: make it easier and safer for the Ukrainian infantry who will come later to finish the clearance. Position destroyed, but the tension doesn't fade. Russian recon already knows there's a Leopard 2 working inside the city. A tank may be fast, but for drones, 20 to 30 kilometers is nothing. Soon the Leo is glowing bright on Russian operators' screens. Hit. Another hit. And again. And again. The fifth drone finally punches through the Leopard's cage armor near the transmission. The engine stalls. The tank halts. On the radio, try starting on emergency. And a miracle. The Leopard roars back to life and crawls away in manual mode. This Leo's got 9 lives just like a cat. Mission complete. The tank makes it back to base under cover. But the war rolls on. In Russian workshops, new cages are welded onto tanks, while Ukrainian Leopards get ready for their next hunt. Show must go on. These barrels, tracks, chunks of armor, transmission blocks, and engine parts could have been turned into roofs for schools and hospitals, or into greenhouses and grain depots. They could have built bridges, ferries, and docks. But for now, they remain here, monuments to a brutal war. These burned out tanks and APCS hold unique stories, and we're here to uncover them. Subscribe to our channel so we have someone to share them with. Thanks for watching.
If the Marder 1A3 overheats, it stalls. If it's even a little low on antifreeze, it stalls again. Breaking down in the middle of a mission? Not exactly ideal, but do the Marder's strengths make up for the glaring weaknesses of this aging warrior? Let's hear it straight from the front lines. In Kursk Oblast, they worked like a mower, destroying buildings where the Russians were hiding. If it wasn't for such equipment, I don't know if I would have taken the village of Malaya Lokhnya. Here's what that firestorm looks like in action. Ukrainian paratroopers demolish a house full of Russian soldiers using the Marder IFV's cannon in the Kursk region. The result? 5 months later, the Russians still haven't been able to push Ukrainian forces off their own territory. But before reaching this level of success, Marder 1A3 crews went through intense training and combat drills at German training grounds. Afterward, they returned to Ukraine to pass on their knowledge to fellow soldiers. What's impressive and what German instructors report, and I've seen it myself several times, is how quickly Ukrainian soldiers adapt to the system, how fast they learn, and how technically skilled they are. It's impossible to overstate. Drop a like on this video if you're also impressed by soldiers' dedication. Here's how one Marder 1A 3-gunner recalls the training process and working with experienced instructors. It's tough for the gunner to learn. This is my workspace. I control the turret left and right, can rotate 360 degrees. Ammo is loaded here. This is the key we use to load it. The instructors train us well. They help. They explain everything. Once the intense training was over, all the soldiers, along with their German IFVs, headed straight into battle. Waiting for them, mines, ATGMs, and Russian FPV drones. As practice shows, Western equipment and weapons are a top priority for Putin's army. And here's proof from a Ukrainian soldier who is on a mission in a Marder 1A3. They throw everything at it. Every time we roll out, we get hit by full salvos of Grad rockets. Sometimes they mistake it for a Bradley, and then all hell breaks loose. This isn't an isolated case. Russians often fire an entire Grad rocket salvo at a single IFV. We highly doubt their Soviet-era MLRS can match HIMARS in accuracy, but they try to compensate with sheer volume. That's Grads coming in. For some reason, they really don't like us, and we fired back at them a little. Luckily, not a single rocket hit its target, and the soldiers made it out alive. We all got out in one piece, picked up the infantry, and got them to the evacuation point. Since Ukrainians deploy the Marder with their air assault troops, the ones breaking through Russian defenses, the crews have to push dangerously close to enemy positions. That's a massive risk, as they can hit a mine or take an RPG round at any moment. Here's how one Ukrainian soldier recalls Marder's role in an assault. We broke through enemy lines, launched the assault, dropped off the troops. Then we pulled back while firing. Then we went back in with covering fire, picked up the guys, and got out. That crew completed their mission successfully, but the next one came terrifyingly close to disaster. Ukrainian forces were using the Marder alongside a tank, taking out Russian positions before sending in infantry. Everything was going fine, until the Marder hit a mine. We rolled out as a tank Marder pair. We were defending Novorodivka. The plan was to work together, but something went wrong, and we hit an anti-tank mine on the asphalt. Big thanks to German steel. Entire crew successfully evacuated through the ramp. Once again, this proves that in Western armies, a soldier's life is valued more than the vehicle. And that rule applies whether it's cutting-edge tech or something built back in the 60s. Just compare how Russian and Western forces treat their troops. Look at this BMP-3 that hit a mine and took an FPV drone strike. It's burning from the inside out. Now, here's how the German Marder handled a similar challenge. It took 5 Russian FPV drone hits. Imagine the level of impact. Sometimes a single one of these drones can disable a tank. Unfortunately, the vehicle was lost, but not a single Ukrainian soldier died. It can take an FPV hit. The drone doesn't burn through it completely. The first and second armor layers hold it back. That's how effective this armor is. When soldiers know their vehicle is built to protect them, their motivation to complete the mission skyrockets, even when they're outnumbered and outgunned. Here's proof. We got right up to the tree line and opened fire on an enemy assault group. After that, our infantry just had to clear the area and set up defenses. If you want to hear more first-hand accounts from combat crews, make sure to subscribe to the channel. At first glance, the Marder 1A3 seems like the perfect assault IFV. Ukrainian soldiers' stories confirm its effectiveness in many ways, but things aren't always as they seem. Let's break down its firepower, armor, engine, and other technical features. The Marder 1A3's biggest strength is its cannon and machine gun, which provide fire support during combat. What's happening right now? We're firing the cannon at targets. First, we take a ranging shot, then adjust and fire in bursts. The 20mm cannon fires armor-piercing rounds at blistering speeds. Rate of fire, 1,000 to 1,200 rounds per minute. Here's how one soldier who got to test the Marder's firepower describes it. We calibrated the sights, locked onto the target, and hit it dead on. And this is what the fire control panel looks like. Simple, ergonomic, and intuitive. This is your main control panel. Pretty straightforward. MG stands for machine gun. MK is the 20mm cannon. Easy to figure out. 2 ammo boxes here, one for HE rounds, one for AP rounds. The ammo is stored right behind the crew. There's also a safety indicator showing how many rounds are left. There are 2 ammo boxes. The top one is AP, the bottom one is HE. 2 belts run behind us, one for each type. To keep the cannon and machine gun running smoothly, they need to be properly maintained and serviced on time. It depends on the weapon's lubrication. If it's graphite-based, it can jam. If it's gun oil, it fires smoothly. Aside from maintenance, the manufacturer of the ammunition also plays a big role. Better quality means a lower risk of malfunctions. It also depends on the ammo manufacturer. If it's from an unfamiliar producer, jams happen more often. Compared to Soviet or Russian guns mounted on IFVs, Ukrainian soldiers noticed a clear difference. It's easier to operate, easier to load, fewer malfunctions, and the rate of fire is way better. Another thing Ukrainian crews appreciate is Marder 1A3's soundproofing. Inside, gunfire isn't deafening like in older IFVs. In the troop compartment, you barely feel the cannon firing. You can sit there comfortably without needing headphones. The second, and arguably the most important advantage of the Marder 1A3 is its armor. Proven to save lives not just on paper, but in real combat. First, it's dual-layered. Second, there's a protective capsule inside. So even if the outer armor gets penetrated, the capsule keeps the crew and troops safe. Concussions happen, but at least we stay alive. The rear section where infantry disembarks is also well designed. The rear ramp is additional protection for the vehicle. It shields the crew and infantry. It can withstand hits from 14.5mm rounds fired by Russian BTR-80s and BRDMS. But good armor comes at a cost. It makes the vehicle much heavier. For comparison, a BMP-1 weighs only 13 tons, while a fully loaded Marder weighs 34 tons. Speed is crucial for an IFV, whether charging enemy positions or extracting troops. A BMP-1 has just 300 horsepower, a Bradley has 500, and the Marder boasts 600. However, the weight of its armor creates a power-to-weight imbalance affecting its mobility. 31 miles per hour. Max speed is 40, but only if you push the tachometer to the limit. At that point, it's guaranteed to overheat. And then, we're not going anywhere. As you can see, the engine struggles under the weight. But honestly, we'd rather sit in a well-protected vehicle than turn into scrap metal like so many Soviet-era IFVs. This engine hasn't been upgraded or replaced since the first generation. They just slapped it on the vehicle and called it a day. Meanwhile, they kept adding armor. If I'm not mistaken, the first Marder weighed 20 tons, and now it's 34. Another challenge Marder crews face in combat is muddy terrain after heavy rain. The vehicle doesn't handle mud well. Either the engine or the transmission can't keep up. For its weight, they're just too weak. There were times we had to pull it out. Luckily, an American ally came to the rescue. We got towed out by a Bradley. Bradley pulling a Marder? Kind of funny considering Bradley is actually a bit lighter. The Germans are known for their attention to detail, and it really shows in their military vehicles. Just check out these small but thoughtful features on the Marder. The tracks have rubber pads. This way, the vehicle can drive on roads without tearing them up. The next little feature is a lifesaver for anyone riding on top of the armor. The Germans thought of small conveniences like these anti-slip rectangles. Thanks to them, you don't slide off. Trust me, in winter or fall, when everything's covered in mud, it gets insanely slippery. But with these, you feel much more secure. And the third one? A nice touch for the driver. Rear view mirrors for better maneuvering. You probably didn't even notice, but the mirrors have been here the whole time. Even with its age, the Marder 1A3 has proven itself in battle, especially when compared to its competitors in the IFV category, BMP-1, BMP-2, and BMP-3. A Ukrainian paratrooper sums it up. Right now, we could really use more Marder 1A3s. This is the best version, and it works well for us. So, what do you think? Which IFV has the best chances in an assault? Germany's Marder 1A3, America's M2 Bradley, or Russia's BMP-3? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Wait, is this really a German PZH 2000 or a studio apartment on tracks? Because this artilleryman looks way too comfy. He's literally loading a 155mm shell while wearing slippers. But don't rush to laugh just yet. This monster howitzer is created for some serious damage. It can fire 3 rounds in 10 seconds. That's its max rate of fire, and that's really fast. However, there's a catch. This German howitzer was never tested in wars where artillery is needed 24/7. So how well can the Panzerhaubitze handle the brutal demands of the Russia-Ukraine war then? A lot depends on how well trained the crew is. That's why Ukrainian artillerymen went through intense training at German military ranges. It lasted a month and a half, practically without breaks. And it wasn't a walk in the park. It was especially tough for the mechanics, who had to learn every tiny detail inside and out to properly maintain the system before and after battles. They had a separate training program. They went through the course 3 times. And to make things even harder, most Ukrainian gunners had only worked with old Soviet artillery before, machines with zero electronics, let alone NATO's high-tech systems. So saying they were blown away by the PZH-2000's onboard systems is an understatement. It's like going from driving a car to piloting Darth Vader's spaceship. Hit that like button if you just imagined Jedi faces of shock as they see Vader loading shells into a PZH-2000. But unfortunately, high-tech electronics aren't always battlefield-friendly in heavy rain or snowstorms. There's a real risk they could malfunction due to excessive moisture or dirt. That's why soldiers inside wear special boots and even use a vacuum cleaner. So maybe the next-gen version of the PZH-2000 should come with a free cleaning service. Just kidding, but keeping the system clean and dry is a major task for the crew. But the Panzer has advantages that make you forget about these little inconveniences. According to a former Ukrainian commander, the PZH-2000's undeniable strength is its protection, thanks to homogeneous rolled steel armor. It's called Panzer for a reason. It weighs 10 to 12 tons more than any other howitzer in its class. That extra weight, it's all about crew protection, because training an artillery crew is long and expensive. German engineers also put serious thought into preventing catastrophic ammunition detonations, a nightmare scenario for any crew. The way they designed the ammo storage is fantastic. The propellant charges are kept in separate compartments, just like in a Leopard or Abrams tank, behind armored doors. Even if something hits, the panels blow out, but the crew survives. We've mentioned in previous videos that every Western weapon system in Ukraine is constantly hunted by Russian reconnaissance and strike drones. But when the PZH-2000 was being developed, drone warfare wasn't a massive threat yet. Surprisingly though, this howitzer's armor is proving up to the challenge. It's one of the few vehicles that doesn't need extra cage armor for drone defense because it can handle itself. For a Lancet's shaped charge jet to reach the ammo and trigger detonation, it first has to pierce the side armor, then the side skirts, then hit the track, then get past a road wheel, then go through the inner hull wall. And only after all that, if anything is left of the warhead, might it actually reach the shells. The PZH-2000 has a 5-person crew, and they stay inside at all times. There's no need to step out during battle to load shells like with the Soviet 2S-7 Pion, another howitzer fighting alongside the German system in Ukraine. And that factor? It literally saved a Ukrainian artilleryman's life when his vehicle was hit. When our driver was killed and I was wounded, the other 3 guys who weren't hurt got out and did exactly what they were trained to do. Now imagine you're a loader on a Caesar howitzer, firing shells when suddenly a Russian recon drone spots you. Chances are you won't just have a kamikaze drone coming your way. You'll get a rain of mortar rounds or cluster shells in your sector. That's a massive risk. But inside the PZH-2000, artillerymen feel a lot safer. The problem with artillery is that we're constantly under fire, and most of the time without armor. Here, I feel secure. I know this thing can take a 152mm shell. Even if it lands just a few meters away, we'll be fine inside. Want to learn more about Western artillery and tech in the war? Subscribe to the channel. But can the Panzerhaubitze handle muddy fields and snow-covered plains in Eastern Europe? We've used the PZH-2000 in rain and snow. It's not like the Pion, where if it rains, you just stop working. In fully automatic mode, this howitzer only needs 2 crew members to keep firing, even though its standard crew is 5. Besides the commander, gunner, and driver, there are 2 loaders, who step in when reloading the ammo rack, or if the autoloader malfunctions. You're sitting in the gunner's seat. Here's the commander's spot. This is where the first and second loaders sit, and over there, that's the driver's seat. On combat missions, these guys feel confident, because their safety comes first. The PZH-2000 is equipped with NBC protection, ventilation, and an automatic fire suppression system. During operation, we close all the hatches. The gun pulls in air through filters, creating internal pressure. This pushes all the smoke outside while firing. If chefs have a secret ingredient in their recipes, Western howitzer manufacturers have a built-in computer, the ultimate artillery assistant that calculates everything and helps deliver the perfect serving of destruction. I input the coordinates here, select the fuse type, and set how it should detonate. If it's a programmable fuse, I enter the altitude for detonation. Then I make corrections. Once everything is set, I hit save, and I'm ready to fire. The Ukrainian PZH-2000 crews have prepared plenty of surprises for the Russians in the form of 155mm shells. Their arsenal includes smart 155mm, M982 Excalibur, Volcano rounds, and even Indian-made 155mm munitions. This is in Smart 155 shell. We use them against tanks. They're easy to operate because the gun calculates all the coordinates. Everything is automated. A Ukrainian artilleryman who has fired dozens of rounds describes what using these beasts is like. The max effective range depends on the shell type. Up to 30 kilometers, the firepower is at its peak. If the shell hits the target, nothing is left standing where it lands. Throughout the full-scale war, Ukrainians have tested various NATO shells. But are Germany's Smart 155 shells as effective as the manufacturer claims? Here's how a Ukrainian soldier recalls using them. We found a spot where the enemy felt completely safe. They thought we couldn't hit them effectively. They didn't even bother hiding. Then we rolled in with Smart 155 shells, and let's just say we gave them a proper nightmare. The results didn't take long to show. For 2 days straight, our crew took out 5 tanks, each with a detonation. And here's how that looks in action. For this Russian tank, its encounter with the PZH-2000 was its last. In another clip, the Howitzer engages in counter-battery fire, taking out a Russian Gatsin B along with its ammunition depot. The impact is impressive, but there's a trade-off. Maintenance time. Even after just 2 shots, servicing the gun takes a full day. So is this a deal breaker, or does the firepower make up for it? On land targets, the PZH-2000 has proven itself 100%. But did you know that, in theory, it could have been used for naval strikes? Yep, you heard that right. In the 2000s, the German military explored ways to increase naval firepower without major ship modifications. Engineers even plan to replace the 76mm OTO Malera Compact on the Hamburg frigate with the PZH-2000's turret, which can hit targets up to 25 miles away. Sounds promising, but reality didn't quite match expectations. While test range trials were deemed successful, it's unclear whether it was ever tested at sea. Ultimately, before the Hamburg entered service, the PZH-2000 turret was removed. Since then, Germany hasn't experimented with land-based artillery on ships again. Our take? Weapons should be used for their intended purpose. That's how you get the best results. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments. Before the Russia-Ukraine war, the PZH-2000 had its first combat experience in Afghanistan, firing against the Taliban. But honestly, that was more of a live fire test range than a real war. The commander who trained me in Germany fired just 28 shells from a PZH-2000 in Afghanistan. On my first day in Ukraine, I fired 2 full ammo loads, 120 shells, then went to sleep very satisfied. In September 2006, 3 Dutch PZH-2000s were used in Operation Medusa, securing Panjwai and its surroundings. The following year, the Dutch deployed them to Uruzgan, where they supported the assault on Tarinquout. Meanwhile, Germany was hesitant to send its own PZH-2000s, since German politicians considered the mission a policing operation, meaning troops were only supposed to have light weapons. That changed after 3 Bundeswehr soldiers were killed. Germany finally approved sending 3 howitzers to Kunduz, and on July 10, 2010, they saw combat for the first time, covering the evacuation of an armored vehicle that hit a mine. The Afghan war revealed some flaws in the PZH-2000. The ventilation system struggled in extreme dust, and extra top armor was needed because Taliban forces heavily relied on mortars. The biggest issue? Overheating and dust infiltration, which could shut down the entire system. Germany later introduced an upgraded version to fix some of these problems. But let's be real, nothing could have prepared the PZH-2000 for Ukraine, where it's fighting a far stronger enemy than the Taliban. And yet, Ukrainian artillerymen swear by it. We're very grateful to the Chancellor of Germany and the German people for these ACS. This is a perfect weapon. One such howitzer is worth 3 Soviet ones we used to have. Compared to Soviet-era artillery, the PZH-2000 is king in armor, firepower, and automation. But its downsides? Complex maintenance and sensitive electronics. Even so, it remains one of the best self-propelled guns out there. What do you think is its biggest advantage? Armor, automation, or firepower? Drop your thoughts in the comments.
Don't shoot. It's just YouTube coming through. This is our legendary Leopard, nicknamed Rhino. He's been in hell for half a year now. Come on, I'll show you.
This Leopard 2 is now hiding among the ruins of Pokrovsk, a Ukrainian city under siege by the Russian army. Here's footage of its last combat sortie.
Разулся на мине вот здесь. И поехал, но недалеко.
Yep, that's an Abrams, also stuck in hell. Oh god. And that's only one side. Leopard and Abrams met in hell like two distant relatives at a family dinner. Luckily, they're fighting on the same side. But that won't stop us from comparing them because Leopard and Abrams share the same enemy. Drones, circling high above, waiting patiently for someone to roll out onto position.
The problem is there are really a lot of them.
So how do these tanks handle the brutal conditions of the front? How many hits can their armor take? You're about to find out. And later, you'll learn about the effectiveness of their guns. Because while Leopard and Abrams both carry the same cannon, the way they fire isn't exactly identical. So, defense. The first Abrams tanks arrived at the front in the middle of winter. Ukrainians chose a hooligan tactic, fast raids. The tank dashes toward Russian positions, fires, then pulls back. During combat runs, the Abrams stays in constant motion, stopping only to fire. This hit-and-run style gives Ukrainian infantry powerful fire support and halts Russian assault groups. Still, in one of these raids, a Ukrainian Abrams took a direct hit from an anti-tank guided missile. But it came out with no major damage. The tank drove off under its own power. The American beast survived thanks to its extra armor.
Here on the hull are ARAT reactive armor tiles. That's standard American protection.
Just a reminder, ARAT, active reactive armor tiles, are add-on explosive reactive armor blocks. Inside each block is a thin layer of explosive. When a shell or rocket hits, the block detonates. The result?
The block blows apart, but the shaped charge jet scatters.
After a block has done its job, it's replaced with a new one. So don't let footage of shredded tiles upset you. What it really means is the tank itself survived untouched. But what if a shaped charge round punches into the turret? That's a problem. See that hole? That's the aftermath of a shaped charge jet. But if you peek inside, the equipment's intact. No through penetration, no bloodstains, meaning the crew lived. Even though Ukrainian Abrams don't have the secret depleted uranium armor, the turret of an American still manages to soak up the hit. But only days after the Abrams first rolled into combat in this war, Ukraine lost its first of the 31 supplied by the US. The first FPV drone strike hit the engine, immobilizing the tank. The second slammed into the rear of the turret, igniting the ammo stored in the bustle rack. Luckily, the crew got out alive. So how does it happen that Abrams armor shrugs off a guided anti-tank missile, but falls victim to a cheap, jury-rigged Chinese FPV? Before you see the answer, do us a favor. Hit like on this video so YouTube knows it's worth spreading. Thanks. Here's the deal. FPV drones usually carry a standard anti-tank shaped charge grenade, capable of penetrating up to 450 millimeters of rolled homogeneous armor. But the Abrams frontal hull and turret armor are far thicker, up to 800 to 900 millimeters equivalent. Very little chance of breaking through there. Keep in mind that's equivalent thickness. The actual steel is thinner because the armor is composite, with layered fillers, and it reacts differently to kinetic penetrators versus shaped charges. But Abrams is a frontal brawler. Its armor is built for head-on duels, from the sides, the rear, and especially from above. It's far more vulnerable. That's why FPVs always try to slip in like a prizefighter, duck past the guard, and land an uppercut under the chin. Quick, precise, devastating. So, what can be done?
Look, on the turret and upper hole we welded on contact 1. That's not standard protection. We came up with it ourselves, and the Americans laugh at it. We also added a cage, mangal.
The Contact 1 explosive reactive armor works the same way as ARAT. It's effective against shaped charges rated up to about 500 millimeters of steel. And the so-called mangal, an improvised anti-drone grill of rebar or mesh mounted above the turret, is designed to wreck or prematurely detonate a kamikaze drone's warhead before it reaches the main armor. But does it actually work? Some analysts argue all this DIY armor is pointless. It makes the tank heavier, less maneuverable, and shortens the life of its components. But those experts aren't the ones driving into combat every day. Here's what Ukrainian tankers say.
Right now, I'm alive only because of this protection. We take lots of hits, sometimes 10 to 15 in a single sortie.
So who do you trust more, experts or the guys inside the tanks? You decide. And check this out. According to Russians, this Abrams you've already seen took 12 hits, and this one, in just 2 minutes of battle, took up to 6 direct FPV strikes. 2 more drones missed, and 1 got stuck in the cage. In both cases, the crews waited for a safe moment and got out. So, Abrams may not always survive, but it does its primary job, saving the crew. But what about the German Leopard 2? Let's look at the most common version in Ukraine, the Leopard 2 A4. Like most modern tanks, the Leopard 2 A4 uses multi-layer composite armor with tungsten and titanium inserts between steel plates. The exact specs are classified, but here's what matters. See the familiar sight. Yep, contact 1 again. Meaning that even the secret German armor can't go out against FPVs without add-ons. You'll also notice contact 1 blocks hanging on the sides, because unlike the Abrams with its ARAT package, the Leo has no built-in modular system. And without a Mongol? Forget it. Just look at this Leo's fancy cloak of cages. Let's hear from his commander. Happy with the protection, man?
Well, I wouldn't say the armor's thick, but it works. For example, on this sortie, we took 5 FPVs.
But sometimes 1 hit is all it takes. Russian FPV operators are getting better and better at striking weak spots.
Here the FPV slipped between the nets and nailed the transmission. But this Leopard has 9 lives, like a cat. Oh, hear that? FPV buzzing right over us.
We'll leave him there. It's getting dicey. In a moment, you'll see what happened to his Leo with the damaged transmission. But here's the early verdict on protection. Leopard 2 A4s without factory upgrade kits are more vulnerable on the sides. That's why later versions, A5 and A6, got additional composite side armor modules that massively improved protection against both shaped charges and kinetic penetrators. Ukraine does have some A6s and a handful of Swedish STRV 122As, essentially Leopard 2 A5s with unique upgrades. We've got a whole video on that tank on our channel, but all these newer models are in tiny numbers, so we're leaving them out of this Abrams versus Leopard comparison. For the 2 A4s, Ukrainian crews shore up the weak spots with contact 1. So when it comes to all-round protection, Abrams has a slight edge, because ARAT is an integrated system, not field improvisation. So for now, Abrams 1, Leopard 0. But what happened to our guy after that drone strike? Look, when the FPV nailed the transmission, the Ukrainian Leopard stalled and froze in place. Damn.
Now listen, you'll hear it. Hear that? A Russian FPV circling, waiting for us to climb out.
So, what happened next?
Over the radio, they yelled at us to start up with the emergency gearbox.
Emergency gearbox?
Yeah, it runs without brains, without electronics, just like a standard manual gearbox. So we fired it up and drove out.
That's right, switching to manual saved the crew and the tank. A very handy trick when your automatic transmission gets wrecked. Could Abrams pull the same stunt? Nope. The Abrams Allison X 1100 transmission has no manual override. It's a fully automatic hydromechanical system where gear changes happen by themselves, depending on speed and load. But that's not laziness or poor design. It's an American design philosophy. The US wanted any soldier after just a crash course to hop into an Abrams and drive. Sit down, hit the gas, go. Simplicity is king when seconds decide survival. On top of that, the automatic protects the drivetrain from dumb driver mistakes, lowering the risk of breakdown during a march or in combat. Strong arguments, no doubt. But in this specific fight, the Leopard's manual fallback kept its crew alive. That's priceless. Score tied, 1-1. So, tell me, what would you pick? The ease of a full auto or the survivability of a manual override? Drop your answer in the comments. And now, let's move on to the real deal, the guns. Because a tank can't just be a target, it has to shoot back. Abrams M1A1 and Leopard 2A4 are formally armed with the same gun, the Rheinmetall RH120L/44. In the US though, it goes by the name M256, since it was built under license. But here's where the Americans went their own way. They doubled down on unique ammo. The standout is the M829 round, with a depleted uranium penetrator. Because of uranium's insane density, the M829 crushes Soviet armor like a steel hammer smashing a clay night pot. That's why this shell became a legend. It turned the Abrams into the undisputed tank duel champion, smashing Iraqi armor in Operation Desert Storm, 1991, and again in Iraq, 2003. Thanks to the M829 family, Abrams earned its reputation as the tank that doesn't lose duels. So what's Leo shooting? The Leopard 2A4 uses the DM13 and DM23 APF SDS rounds with tungsten cores. Cool? Sure, but tungsten can't match uranium. Penetration is about 25 to 30% lower. So in a head-to-head, the American M829 takes the crown. Now, about DU rounds and health debates, yeah, they spark controversy. But really, does it matter how many milligrams of uranium dust Russian tank crews inhale after getting shredded by an M829? I think we both know the answer. Point goes to the American, 2-1 Abrams. But here's the twist. This war isn't about tank duels. You've seen it throughout this video. Tanks mostly fight infantry hiding in buildings and tree lines. And with FPVs and ATGM operators swarming, tanks are forced to stay on the move. Both Abrams and Leopard have excellent fire control systems. No need to bury you in technical manuals. Let's just watch them in action. And here's the kicker. The baseline Abrams M1A1 lags in gun stabilization. That's why it often has to stop before firing. You saw it earlier, frame by frame. Meanwhile, the Leopard 2A4's FCS is slightly more advanced, calculating faster for accurate fire on the move. Watch how Ukrainians put that to work. That's a solid edge. Point to the German Cat, 2-2. But a tie? Boring. Let's crank this duel up. The winner should be decided by comparing engines. Abrams' gas turbine versus Leopard's diesel. Totally different philosophies, each with pros and cons. And here's the fresh news. Just days ago, 49 Abrams arrived from Australia. They'll likely become Ukraine's main Abrams fleet, since only a handful of the original American batch are still in action. And get this, the Aussies tweaked the turbines to run on diesel, not aviation kerosene. A huge logistical relief, since most of Ukraine's armored fleet guzzles diesel. How they'll perform under fire? We'll soon find out. For now, we'll leave this duel unresolved, but you won't have to wait long. Subscribe, and you'll see first-hand reactions from Ukrainian tankers testing the Aussie Abrams in combat. Got questions for those crews? Drop them in the comments. We'll make sure they reach the front. Thanks for sticking with us.